Hello, I am Tan Kee Chuan, Chief Quality Officer from the National University of Singapore to the ASEAN University Network Quality Assurance. I am an AUN-QA assessor, trainer, and member of the technical team. This presentation consists of the training slides for the AUN-QA Quality Assessment at Program Level version 4.0. There are a total of 9 modules for this training. The 8 criteria of assessment each have their own module plus an introduction module. We begin with Module 1, the Introduction. This entire training will be about version 4, the newest version of the AUN-QA assessment at the program level. If you are watching these training slides alone, please write down on post-it notepads what it is that you wish to learn from this workshop. What are your expectations? What do you wish to take away or be able to accomplish after this workshop? What knowledge and skills do you wish to acquire? If you are watching these training slides in a group with colleagues, now would be a good time to introduce yourselves to each other, sort of an icebreaker. Also, write down on post-it notepads what your group collectively expect of this workshop. What are your takeaways? What knowledge and skills do you all wish to acquire? And if a facilitator is present with you, have that person put up the completed notepads on a flip chart or a board. Organize or categorize the notepads as you see fit. Please go ahead and write down your expectations. We begin with defining what is quality in higher education. Quality in higher education covers every function carried out in a university. There is the teaching and learning, of course, the merit of services from a university, course registration, financial services, dormitory, sports and wellness facilities, even the placing of comfortable benches under shady trees, the classrooms, the laboratories, offices for the academic and support staff, wired and wireless internet connection. These are all important aspects in defining quality in higher education. And quality can be viewed from multiple perspectives, multiple stakeholders. From the perspective of academia, that is the academic staff or faculty members' point of view, there must be excellence in teaching and learning. The academic staff need to be well qualified. More and more, universities require their academic staff to earn a PhD degree. From the perspective of students, certainly from the perspective of employers and from those who accredit academic programs, the student graduates must possess a set of skills that make them employable. Being able to do one's job would also include the need for communication and interpersonal skills. Universities need to also provide value for money or a low cost per student in educating them. From all perspectives, there must be excellence in what is carried out in a university. For quality assurance, we consider that work processes need to be systematic and structured. Take the process of teaching and learning, for example. There has to be a lesson plan. Then there are the lessons themselves, and also a way of assessing if the material have been well taught by the academic staff and well learned by the students. Furthermore, the attention to assuring the quality of the teaching process needs to be continuous. The AUN-QA assessment is really a systematic management process to monitor the performance of academic programs in higher educational institutions. In this workshop, participants will learn to define learning outcomes or what can be gained from going through this workshop. They include defining the AUN-QA framework and what are its 8 assessment criteria. The criteria need to be properly interpreted in order that the assessment can be carried out. Importantly, there is applying the PDCA approach in the assessment, the plan, do, check, and act cycle. The requirements for writing the self-assessment report are explained, as is writing the self-assessment report itself. And then there is the entire assessment process, organizing the site visit, putting together supporting documents, arranging all the meetings and interviews with students, academic staff, support staff, alumni, and employers, and getting all the facts and figures as evidence to show to the assessors. To put the AUN-QA in a global perspective, there are other assessment systems in other parts of the world. For example, there is the Baldrige Award in North America. Europe has what it calls the ESG, or the European Standards Guideline. And of course, there is the AUN-QA for ASEAN countries. And yet other parts of the world, such as Africa, Australia, Middle East, and so on, there are also pockets of other assessment frameworks, but these are smaller. The AUN-QA framework is the only regional, transnational framework for the ASEAN region. The AUN-QA framework consists of 2 broad systems. On the left is program assessment. On the right is institutional assessment. The very first trial program assessment took place at Burapha University in 2007. The very first institutional assessment was carried out only in January 2017 at the Vietnam National University, Hanoi University of Science. The program assessment model consists of 8 criteria, whereas the institutional assessment model is a whole lot more complex, consisting of 25 criteria, broken down into the 4 areas of strategic, systemic, functional, and results. We next go through the model for the program level assessment. This starts with what the stakeholders want to be delivered from the program, the learning outcomes that are expected of the students or the graduates from a particular program. What do employers look for when they hire a university graduates? What are the employers' needs? The learning outcomes drive the structure and content of an academic program. It drives what students learn while in the program, the structure and content of what is taught. The expected learning outcomes also drive the teaching and learning approaches that are used and how the students are assessed. For example, what teaching methods are used? Classroom lectures, project work, independent study, group assignments, and others. Assessment methods include tests, exams, paper presentation, report writing, homeworks, and so on. Together, these criteria 1, 2, 3, and 4 are called the design-related criteria. Then, there are the resources needed to run the program. This begins with the all-important academic staff or faculty members, as some countries would use the term. Criterion 5 looks at how academic staff are groomed, hired, and their lifelong careers at a university. Then there is the student support services, such as university libraries, registrar office, social services, academic advising, dormitory, health services, pastoral care, and so on. The student support services need to be matched to a set of facilities and infrastructure that include the classrooms, the teaching and research laboratories, the social spaces where students gather to study and socialize, Wi-Fi services on campus, and so on. These are called criteria 5, 6, and 7, the resources-related criteria of people and hardware that makes a university run well. The last criterion concerns the outputs and outcomes from running an academic program. What are outputs and outcomes? They include the number of students who graduate each year. They include also the number of research publications. Outputs are easy to measure. For example, the number of meetings held in 1 month. But outcomes are slightly more difficult to grasp. For example, 10 meetings could have been held in 1 month. 10 meetings is an output, but what are the outcomes of the meeting? There could have been a lot of talking at the meetings, but with few decisions made. Compare this to another organization that holds just 5 meetings a month, but they get a whole lot more done. We call criterion 8 the output-related criterion. The AUN-QA model of assessment at the program level version 4.0 composes these 8 criteria. Together, the 8 criteria drive the achievements of the program. There is some degree of quality assurance benchmarking, perhaps compared against similar programs at other universities within the country, or benchmarking may be carried out internationally. So, that basically is the AUN-QA model of assessment at the program level. The model has come a long way from version 1 to version 2 to version 3 and now to version 4. Version 1 consisted of 18 criteria. It has been more than a decade since the model was first applied. The number of criteria has been reduced from 18 to 15 to 11 and now to just 8 criteria. Over succeeding versions, lessons have been learned in streamlining the assessment process and in making the model more focused, more efficient, and easier to use. National quality assurance frameworks are mostly, although not wholly, run based on rules such as the required staff-to-student ratio or the number of publications to produce. Rules are based on numerical indicators that are either satisfied or not satisfied, or complied with or not complied with. Whereas the AUN-QA model of assessment takes on more of a principles-based approach. Principles refer to broad guidelines, a system of belief, or a chain of reasoning. Principles do not connote the need for numerical targets to achieve. Principles are able to take an organization further than rules can. Compare the set of rule versus principle issues in this slide. Whereas a rule-based approach is generally static and standardized, a principles-based approach is more continuous and is contextualized, or something that is assessment or evaluation-based versus one that is improvement-based. A rule-based educational system has a higher tendency to generate fear and suspicion on whether the rules have been followed, whereas a principles-based educational system calls for mutual trust and respect among all parties concerned. The program is not told exactly what to do. It is not about rules. Rather, there is a set of guidelines to follow. At your own time, please compare the rest of the colored pairs in this jigsaw to prescribe versus to provide a framework, to provide extrinsic motivation versus to be motivated intrinsically, to be integrated and systemic versus to be standalone and ad hoc, and so on. Academic programs wish to be recognized by their accreditors, to have a certificate of compliance or audit, or some formal recognition of the program's accomplishments. Accreditation refers to the process of recognition through a third party as having met certain predetermined minimum requirements, whereas an assessment refers to the systematic gathering and quantifying of information with the aim to judge the effectiveness of a system. An audit is a comply, do not comply system, or a satisfy, do not satisfy system, with the aim to award a certificate for having met certain requirements. ISO standards are audits. And last but not least, evaluation refers to the process of critically analyzing a system, leading to a judgment and recommendations for improvement. The AUN-QA model of assessment is largely principles-based. It does not prescribe any rule or strict requirement. It used to in its previous version, but not anymore. The AUN-QA model of assessment provides recommendations for improvement in the 8 criteria shown earlier. The AUN-QA competency model starts with the practitioner level, namely you. You are here to learn how to use the AUN-QA model version 4.0. Your aim is to practice it on your program. This is called the Tier 1 training by the AUN-QA. At the next level, there is the Tier 2 training on how to be an assessor. Level 3 refers to a lead assessor who, in addition to working on an assessment, has to manage one or more junior assessors under his or her charge. This is because assessors minimally work in pairs. After a number of years of being a lead assessor, the next step is really at the expert level, where an assessor's repertoire of knowledge and skills over many assessments in several faculties, science, social science, medicine, law, engineering, arts, and so on. This puts the person at a very advanced and experienced level. Things have gotten a bit more complicated in the past several years, along the lines of there is program assessment, and then there is institutional assessment, where more knowledge and skills are needed. Remember the earlier slide that showed the institutional assessment model of 25 criteria versus the program assessment model of just 8 criteria. And then there is also a chief assessor level that requires coordination and leadership skills in leading a whole team of assessors, not just assessor pairs. At the training level, the skills needed are even more. A trainer trains other assessors to do their job. There is also the design of the training courses. So, the AUN-QA competency model has really been enlarged and expanded in recent years, especially since 2017 when we got into institutional assessment. A big part of the AUN-QA model uses the PDCA approach: plan, do, check, and act. The starting point is to plan for change, plan for improvement, then do or make the change, and then check or review for what has been changed. Finally, act or make the corrective changes. And when necessary, the cycle begins all over again, or continuous improvement as it is called. Going through an AUN-QA assessment involves a team effort. Your presence here is the first step. You probably have a team of academic staff and administrative support staff behind you. You probably need to engage and get buy-in from a range of stakeholders, including all the academic staff in your department, alumni who have graduated from the program, and of course, buy-in from employers who have hired your graduates. And the workload to go through an assessment has to be divided or shared among those involved. You, as a team leader, are tasked with organizing the assessment. You have to set and then manage the expectations of your team members. What is the climate in your organization? Will your team members be motivated, or are they doing this because they have to do it? In other words, do they internalize the change processes, or are they simply forced to do this? Is there pressure from management to complete the assessment in as short a time as possible? Or is it doing the assessment to improve the program and where the timeline to complete the assessment is not an important issue? We have come to the end of the introduction module. The next module discusses Criterion 1, the expected learning outcomes.